Breaking news for the avoidance of doubt. I need to set the scene here. This is important. All F1 journos are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. AMUS out of Germany and Michael Schmidt, one of the God tieriest ones, breaks news for breakfast. And in his latest article on the chaos over at the balls that are red, he's leaked some news. Broken. It's getting techier than techie things, and your boy Cameron apparently can't even speak anymore. Shall we review? Shall we go through? This is important, chat. Maximilian Verstappen is gonzo. It feels like we're like 16 months ago all over again, talking about Sir Lewis leaving Ferrari, to which everybody said at the time, the old grey-bearded F1 Emirati said, oh, Cameron, behave yourself. Lewis ain't going anywhere. He'll be a Mercedes lifer between now and perpetuity. What are they talking about? Well, it was a story and it developed, and look where Lewis Hamilton is now. I'm telling you, F1 history doesn't repeat, but sometimes it does rhyme. Check this out again. Michael Schmidt, here's what he says. Will Horner's power be curtailed? We know a couple of different things about Christian Horner, that it's always been beefy, that it's misconduct, gate allegation, gate PA, central, potentially litigation still going on in the background. Potentially, allegedly. Jos Verstappen doesn't like that. Helmut Marko doesn't like that. Raymond Vermeulen doesn't like that. So what makes you think Max Verstappen is going to like that? Pair all of that with this now. The fact that Red Bull's story in 2025 is epitomised by underperformance, understeer setting, aerodynamic efficiency gone. The car won't even bloody turn, Max Verstappen said, notwithstanding the fact that it's on brake bias -5. And now you have a DNF, a Max Verstappen DNF in the heat of a 2025 battle for the Drivers' Championship, round 11, because he was in the carbon fibre zone. Poor qualifying, Pierre Gasly, but the performance in the car for the avoidance of doubt has been nowhere. And now we get this. Horner's power will be curtailed. Why? Well, just like 2021, if he didn't bring any silverware then, he would have been gonzo then. 2021 Abu Dhabi settings. So what makes you think the strategic objectives of Red Bull have changed now, especially when Dietrich leaves a power vacuum and then Mark Mateschitz, his son no less, rocked up to the Austrian Grand Prix this weekend just to inspect his investment, his gains. And now you get this. Will Christian Horner's power be curtailed even if the exit clause isn't triggered, writes Michael Schmidt. Max Verstappen's future at Red Bull is not certain. The Verstappen clan is reportedly demanding internal restructuring, which is said to primarily affect team principal Christian Horner. Oh, the humanity. What are we doing here, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury? It doesn't even get any more salacious in F1. Let me make this bigger so you guys can see. Let's go through it. Look at that picture of Horner and Max Verstappen when once upon a time they were friends. Max Verstappen is the most expensive and best driver in Formula 1. Even George Russell recently said that the Dutchman will be at the top of every team's list if he were available, and there were still seats available. However, Verstappen, continues Michael Schmidt, isn't actually available. He's still tied to Red Bull for 3 more years. Well, true and not true, because you understand already there's a performance clause in play. In the first instance, the Drivers' Championship. If Max Verstappen, per rumour word on the F1 curb, is not within the top 2 in the Drivers' Championship as at the end of July, performance clause time. It's the first stipulation. Second one, constructors. If Red Bull aren't within the top 3, performance clause time. And again, this is speculation, but sometimes the causation dots and ducks start to line up, do they not? However, continues Michael Schmidt, there's a small window to leave the team. To do so, Max Verstappen would have, oh my gosh, this gets techier than techie things. Let's read it, chat. To do so, Max Verstappen would have to be ranked lower than 3rd in the drivers' standings by the end of July. That's not the case at the moment, but George Russell is only 9 points behind in the championship, and the McLaren drivers are unreachably far behind. This is fueling the imagination in the paddock. For weeks, there's been discussion about whether Max Verstappen might yet end up at Mercedes. No kidding, Sherlock. Toto, the boy who cried wolf, has told you King George Russell of King's Lynn, Norfolk, has echoed those sentiments. Michael Schmidt continues. Max Verstappen is sick of hearing the Mercedes questions. Quote, says, quote, I don't think we need to talk about it anymore. Should I repeat what I said last year? It's the same answer. I'm concentrating on driving. Then at some point in time, we'll come to think about next year. I'm telling you. This is happening, chat. He's just as unwilling, says Michael Schmidt of AMUS, to make a clear commitment to Red Bull as he is to confirm whether he's in talks with Mercedes team boss Toto, the boy who cried. Well, we know that's happening now, Michael Schmidt. Max might not want to tell us, but George has affirmed. So to Toto now. Toto Wolff 2 has had no desire to fuel the fire. Well, he said, what are you talking about, Michael Schmidt? I thought this dude was one of the goatiest ones. Was he not watching the press conferences as at the Austrian Grand Prix round 12? Toto, the boy who cried wolf, says, quote, everything is going according to plan. Contract negotiations aren't conducted as public town hall meetings. True. But he said also that he would be remiss not to seek to have conversations with the best driver on the grid as at June of 2025. Who would have to give way at Mercedes, writes Michael Schmidt. The Austrian doesn't want to comment specifically on talks with Max Verstappen. Well, he did. Of course, they are ongoing. Wolff would be a poor team boss if he didn't explore all options. His words, not Michael Schmidt's. But he also knows that he currently lacks the arguments to sack George Russell. The Englishman is in the form of his life. Verstappen and Russell in the same team would be the best possible driver pairing and a strong counterweight to McLaren and Ferrari. Maybe that's what Toto's doing here. Maybe it's George and Max. Maybe that's why all of a sudden they've become friends. Maybe this is a Russell-Verstappen bromance, the start of. Maybe. I shall become crazy. Hooray, shit. This is mad. This is unbelievable, but it is a thing now that AMUS are writing about it, now that Julian Cerasoli has told you, now that Toto and George are talking about it before the world's F1 accredited media. But there would also be risk of fireworks, as Alex Albon once put it. If Russell were to leave, Mercedes could jeopardise Andrea Kimi Antonelli's career by signing Verstappen. Anybody looks bad against Max Verstappen would be too early for Antonelli in the second year, said Red Bull sporting director Helmut Marko. Here's where it gets techie. Brace yourself. Like bed in, chat, because this is going to get mad. 2 exit scenarios for Max Verstappen, right? AMUS Michael Schmidt of. Verstappen's position will only become a pressing issue for Mercedes if the Dutchman decides to leave Red Bull. There are 2 options for this, 2 stipulations, 2 eventualities. The elegant route would be for the exit clause to be activated. However, Paddock Radio reports that Verstappen clan is still working on a second solution. Techie than techie things. In principle, writes Michael Schmidt, the world champion would like to stay with the brand that paved his way into Formula One and for which he's now in his 11th year. In the future, apparently only under one condition, however. The team must reposition itself strategically. This is said to include the demand that team boss Christian Horner either be replaced or have his powers curtailed. Defend or vacate, therefore, Christian Horner. Oh, the humanity. This article continues. Horner currently holds all the reins at Red Bull. He is head of racing team, the technical division, engine development, RB powertrains and marketing. The top positions at Red Bull will be distributed among several different teams in future following the McLaren example. However, it's not easy to replace Christian Horner, but we do know this, that John Elkann of Ferrari is desperate to supersede one Frederick Vasseur with one Christian Horner. Chaos. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Here's what we need to read out as well. This is key because timeliness is front and centre of this when we're having these conversations. Summer break is a deadline. The decision on where Max Verstappen will race in 2026 is expected to be made before the summer break, end of July, when these performance clauses coincidentally are due to come into place. Wolff can't keep his driver waiting any longer. His statements after the Austrian Grand Prix also support this. We don't want to be sadistic and make our drivers wait longer than necessary, unquote. Toto's words, not mine. Meanwhile, he backs his driver. It's a lineup we're very happy with. George is automatically the top of our list because he wins races and because he's a Mercedes junior. At the top of your list, how? Not any list including Max Verstappen, Toto, the boy who cried wolf. Not now. Horner believes that Mercedes has long since reached an agreement with its drivers, but is holding back on an official announcement to lull Red Bull into uncertainty. Furthermore, says Christian Horner, George isn't researching the market intensively enough. If he was worried about his place, he would look for alternatives. Russell confirms this. There have been inquiries from other teams, but I've told everyone that Mercedes is my first choice. Oh, the humanity. I think this is real, chat. I think this is happening in the background. Now that AMUS are talking about it, let me tell you how you know. I'm not a journalist. I'm a very noddy F1 content creator, but any journalist worth their mettle will double check. It's 2 sources max before you start reporting, minimum even before you start reporting on these things. Now that we have AMUS, a reputable source, talking about Maximilian Verstappen, stipulations and performance clauses, potentially needing to get rid of Christian Horner or at the very least diminish his power at Red Bull in order as a contingency, a proviso on the back of which he will stay. It's going to get techier than techie things. End of July. We've got less or just over a month now to re-establish and find out for real, Max's loyalties. Where's he going to go and whether Red Bull will bend over backwards as Max Verstappen requests in order to keep this fella, or some say soon to be 5-time champion. What are we doing? Yeah.